If you're a younger person and you look at someone older and think, I wish I had their success, just remember something. That successful older person might be looking right back at you and thinking, I wish I could go back and battle like that again.
This is Winning at Work, a podcast about how to think better, make better decisions, and build a career that actually works.
I had a friend named Dave who ran a TV commercial production company. Dave had a rule he would tell every new client who walked in the door. He'd say, your project can be good, fast, or cheap. Pick any two. You can't have all three. So, if you wanted good and fast, that was fine, but it wouldn't be cheap. If you wanted cheap and good, that would be also fine, but it wouldn't be fast. If you wanted it fast and cheap, that was possible, but it probably wouldn't be very good. And Dave didn't say this to be funny. He said it because clients would walk in the door wanting, in some cases, assuming all three. They'd want the highest production quality with a tiny budget, and they'd want a 45-minute video finished by Friday. And Dave knew something that took me years to understand in my own career. Trade-offs are not failures. They're physics. Dave used that rule in two ways. First, it helped him manage his clients. So if someone demanded something impossible, Dave could calmly walk them back to reality. Okay, if you want it fast and good, that's fine, but it won't be cheap, he would say. Suddenly, the conversation became rational again. But Dave also used that rule for something else, and this was the part I really needed to learn. He used it to keep himself sane. Because if you accept the triangle, you stop chasing impossible combinations. And I've realized over the years that careers have their own triangle. Young professionals today want three things mostly. They want meaningful work, good money, good salary, and life balance. But just like Dave's production triangle, the truth is uncomfortable. Most of the time, you can only pick two. Today, I want to talk about the career triangle problem, why it frustrates so many people early in their careers, why it causes a lot of anxiety, and why understanding that trade-offs might actually make your career a lot calmer and make you a much happier person. So the modern career triangle, you want meaning, you want to make money, but you want to have balance. You want all three simultaneously. But in reality, a job that gives you high meaning and high money will never have balance, or almost never have balance, certainly at the beginning, certainly for the first number of years. If you want something that has high meaning and that gives you balance, often you're not going to make as much money. If you want something that makes you a lot of money and you have a lot of balance, it's not going to be the most inspiring work. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic here. It's trade-off math, and it took me a long time to learn. And I think that once you learn it, I think you're a much happier person. And I think you see the path. You see the path in a much more clear way, which has comfort in itself. So let's look at some of those combinations and how those might affect you and how you might best handle them. So let's look at something that has both meaning and money. I generally call this the founder path, the startup thing. So you're building something super exciting. You care really deeply about the mission, and you might make a ton of money someday, but balance disappears. So now in this scenario, you have the meaning in spades. You've got a ton of purpose. You feel absolutely great about what you get up and do every morning. But at first, you're not making any money because you're investor funded, generally, and you're working your butt off. Now, this is fine when you're 24 and you're fresh out of school and don't have a family and you've got loads of time, or you feel like you've got loads of time anyway. So people that fall into this category are like startup founders, early startup employees, entrepreneurs who are a little bit more tactile in what they do. So someone who starts, a chain of laundromats or a chain of some type of tactile business, a plumber that wants to start and grow a plumbing company. Investment bankers, you love what you're doing, but your life becomes the job. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago in the episode "The Hardest Worker in the Room." So there, your life becomes out of balance, but you mind it less, especially if you're young, because you just really feel what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But at the end of the day, when it's the 28th of the month and you're not sure where the rent money's coming from, that's a different kind of stress. So the stress you feel in the job every day of working your butt off is sort of inspiring in a way because you really, really have passion for what you're doing. But when it's the 28th and you can't pay the rent and you have all this work in front of you, you have to pile up to keep this passion project going, that becomes the real challenge. Let's look at something I call the professional comfort path, which is you have some money and you get some work-life balance. This is the good old stable job that pays well. You have reasonable hours, but the job itself may not be deeply meaningful. So I think about Office Space, if any of you've seen that movie, and the guy who just burns out and sits at his desk all day and plays Tetris and whatever. Example of these types are like corporate middle managers, which are, by the way, disappearing more and more in all but the very, very largest and most successful companies. Certain technical roles can be this way. DevOps, if you're a coder. The government work, I'm a little hesitant to mention that because some people in the government don't get paid very well, but some do. I have an uncle who is a beltway bandit, as he likes to call it, and he works in Virginia and works for big government agencies, and he's kind of a specialist. He makes a fortune. And he doesn't work a lot of hours, but I don't think he goes to work every day feeling great about what he's doing. He's ready to retire. And you can do some consulting maybe later in your career once you've learned the ropes. You can get people to pay you an inordinate amount of money for a relatively small amount of time to effectively pass your experience on. That's mostly what I do these days. And there's nothing wrong with it. But in this role, the thing that itches is you start to feel that itch for a purpose, especially in your younger years. You really want to do something that matters. If you have a passion outside of work, that can be an exception. So my neighbor across the street is a chef, a high-end chef, is the chef at one of our hometown's top restaurants, arguably the top restaurant. But he has a deep passion for vintage cars. And as a matter of fact, some of our neighbors are irked by him because he has anywhere from 3 to 7 vintage cars parked in and around his house, but he has a deep passion for it. So for him, it's worth it to have the job that's not that meaningful because he gets to come home and work on the cars. And he's in there, not every day, but a lot of the days he's in there, and it's a big, big passion. So that can be the case and it can work for you. Let's flip it on its head now and let's talk about what I call the passion path, which is you've got some meaning, you might even get some balance, but you're not making any money. You feel fulfilled. You do have a ton of balance, but you don't make a lot of money. And, the obvious example in something like this is teaching, nonprofit work, oftentimes creative work, right? Which is going away more and more because with AI, personal coaching, things like this. The work feels really good and you really feel like you're helping people, which is a deep passion of yours. But again, when it's the 28th, now you have the paycheck. It's more of a case of you've spent all the money by the 28th, or you spent too much money by the 28th because there's just not enough of it coming in. And so that can be very financially stressful. So you come home at work feeling really good about what you do, and then the bills hit you like a ton of bricks, and you start to really question your life decisions. I find this group of folks really questions their life decisions more than anyone else because money is so front and center as to what they need. It's the oxygen, like we've talked about in earlier episodes. It's a challenge. I know people that do it and love it and just deal with the financial stuff. And I know other people that are constantly stressed out because they have to be, or they feel they have to be. But the real problem here is that people think, especially when you're younger, you think you deserve all three. You just don't understand why you can't have all the money and all the time and feel fulfilled because they see people on social media who seem to them to have the money and the time, and you assume the fulfillment, but obviously you don't know the person that just is a face on Instagram, and so you don't know how they're feeling about their lives on a day-to-day basis. But the thing that took me a while to accept, I didn't accept it till my late 20s, is the triangle is not a punishment, right? It's actually beautiful. It gives you a framework for making intentional choices. Back to Dave. Dave wasn't telling his clients they were wrong. He was telling them, hey, let's choose this trade off together. And I really thought it was a brilliant way to manage his clients. And you can take this and extrapolate it out to how to manage your boss, for example, who is, in effect, your client. Dave's genius was how he used the triangle. Because instead of arguing, hey, okay, you choose the two. Do you want it cheap and good? Great. It's not going to be fast. And this is a great managing up technique, one of my favorites. The boss says to you, hey, look, I need this report, TPS report, whatever. It's got to be perfect, and I need it tomorrow. And this is 12 hours of work. And you just say, look, I'm happy to do the report, but if we need it perfect and tomorrow, and that's an important word there, we may need more resources. So again, boss, I'm happy to do the report, but if we want it perfect and tomorrow, we may need more resources. And the key word here, in my opinion, is we, because you're on the same team. You're fighting for the same goal. Boss has to know that. You're not saying no. You're just framing the trade-off, just like Dave. And I really took me a while, but I really came around to respect Dave and how he managed his clients. And yeah, it was just really great. And in your path over time, over the course of your career, you're going to rotate through the triangle. Most people do, almost everyone does, except for exceptional people that are exceptional for either their circumstance or their talent or whatever. In your early career, you get meaning plus money, but no balance. You work your butt off, but you're working towards a goal. In the middle of your career, you start having kids, softball practice, you don't want to miss those. The play, the musical that your kid is in, you don't want to miss those. But you're still making decent money, so you crave a little more balance. So you're not at work at 7:15 anymore at night. And then, of course, later in your career, when you realize life is about people and about your loved ones and about contributing, you want meaning and balance, and the money becomes less critical. Hopefully you've saved or you've accumulated money. The mistake that I made is expecting one job, even the first this is so naive, but even your first job, you walk in the door day one of your first job and you expect, I'm going to get money, I'm going to get balance, and I'm going to get meaning. And effectively, that's never happens. You can get lucky. It does happen, but it's the exception, not the rule. Careers evolve over time. Again, the thing I loved about Dave, he never apologized for the triangle. He just made sure the customer knows this is how it works. He accepted it, and he accepted it very early in his life. And once you accept the triangle, not only does the anxiety around the triangle and what you're lacking disappear, but you have the ability to plan and strategize for the triangle because you've stopped chasing something that's impossible. The real question isn't, why don't I have meaning, money, and balance? Why don't I have it all three? The real question is, which two matter most right now? And for me, the thing I've learned is it's always those last two words. Which two matter most right now? Because what matters today might not matter 5 years from now. What mattered 5 years ago might not matter now. Because careers are long, they take time, and the triangle doesn't trap you unless you let it. The triangle just helps you decide where to stand today. And that was always the lesson for me. There's one more thing about the triangle that people don't talk about very much. When you're young, the triangle can feel frustrating. You feel like you're constantly sacrificing something. You're sacrificing balance for meaning, or meaning for money or money for balance or whatever. And it can feel like everyone older than you has somehow solved the triangle. Look at someone who's successful, quote unquote successful, someone in their 50s or 60s, someone who seems comfortable financially, and you think, man, they figured it out. They've got the house, they've got the stability, they've got the money. And what younger professionals often assume is that those people wouldn't trade places with them for anything. But I'm not so sure that's true. I've experienced this personally. I miss the front lines. I miss the energy of being in the middle of the battle of a start. You wake up every morning knowing what you're building might work or it might fail. But either way, you're battling, and the failure sometimes is exciting. I don't mean failing is exciting. I mean the fact that it might. You're at the roulette table and the ball is careening between two numbers, and one of them's yours and one of them's not. It's stressful. It's exhausting. You're not sure where the rent money's coming from, but there's something absolutely electric about it. There's something about being early in the game when the outcome isn't decided yet and everything feels possible. And I think a lot of older professionals, people who have already climbed the mountain, sometimes look back at that phase of their life and think, man, I miss that. I know I do. If you're a younger person and you look at someone older and think, I wish I had their success, just remember something. That successful older person might be looking right back at you and thinking, I wish I could go back and battle like that again. Because the truth about the triangle is that every corner has something that the other corners don't. When you're young, you have tons of energy, you have time, and you have a world of possibilities. The world can open up in a million different directions. But when you're older, you may have stability, you may have money, and you may have perspective, but the path is taken, and the path forward often is relatively restricted, at least until you fully retire. At every stage, you give something up, and every stage gives you something special in return. And that's why the triangle isn't a trap, it's a map. And the real skill in a career isn't trying to beat the triangle. It's knowing where you are on the map and appreciating what stage of the journey gives you while you're there. Because one day you'll look back at the phase you're in right now, the chaos, the uncertainty, the excitement, and you might realize something. You were actually standing on one of the most interesting corners of the triangle the whole time, and you never knew it. If you want the deeper version of these ideas, I write a newsletter called Winning at Work. You can find it in the show notes.
Follow Winning at Work on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen, and find us at winningatwork.io and across all socials.